The Forgotten Tenant. A box creaked open in the dim light of the apartment, and I felt the weight of eyes I couldn't see. It had been another long night on the night shift, my apartment empty, except for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional squeak from the old building. I thought I was alone. I wasn't. A soft tap echoed behind my bedroom door. I froze. My first thought was that a neighbor had knocked, but no one lived next to me on this floor. Heart hammering, I told myself it was the wind. Then the tap came again, 3 slow, deliberate raps. My hands shook as I picked up my flashlight and crept to the door. The hallway was empty. My neighbor's door was closed, and I knew it had been locked for hours. That's when I noticed the faint smell, a mix of wet paper and dust, the kind that clung to old furniture that had been forgotten for decades. I followed it to the stairs, where a small envelope rested on the top step, sealed with a red wax stamp I didn't recognize. Inside the envelope were photographs of my apartment. Every angle, every corner. They weren't recent. The images were faded, yellowed at the edges, but unmistakably my living room, kitchen, and bedroom. I could see my bed, the lamp, even the cup of tea I had forgotten on the counter this morning. My pulse raced as I flipped to the last photo. It showed me, asleep in my bed, but from a vantage point behind my shoulder I didn't recognize. Someone had been in my apartment, watching me, taking pictures. I dropped the photos, and they fluttered to the floor as a whisper slid through the room. "You're not alone." I spun around, empty. I rushed to lock every door, every window, but the locks clicked in a rhythm that wasn't mine, almost as if something else had been moving them. Then I saw it, a shadow, elongated and unnatural, pressed against the far wall. Not a human shape, more like a dark smear, curling, shifting. I ran to my phone to call the police. No signal. Every light in my apartment flickered, then went out. In the darkness, I heard it moving closer, slow, deliberate footsteps on the wooden floor, creaking in time with my heartbeat. I backed into the corner, eyes wide, flashlight trembling in my hand. The shadow stopped. Silence. Then, a soft scraping sound, like fingernails across wood, coming from the other side of the room. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. My breaths came in short bursts, and I realized something. It knew me. It had been watching, waiting for me to notice. A gust of cold air blew past me, carrying the faint smell of old paper and rust. The envelope lay open on the floor, a new photograph resting on top. It was me, standing in the hallway, looking at the shadow I hadn't yet seen. My stomach dropped. How had it taken the photo? How had it moved so fast? I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. And then, softly, the whisper again. "You can't leave." The shadow stretched toward me, impossibly long, limbs bending in ways that shouldn't exist. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The only thing I could do was watch as it pressed closer, almost curiously, almost gently, yet terrifying all the same. I closed my eyes, hoping it was a dream, a hallucination from too many nights alone. When I opened them again, the shadow was gone. The envelope sat empty. The photographs vanished. Everything seemed normal to normal. But I know it's still here, watching, waiting, and sometimes, when I leave the room, I swear I hear the faint tap of fingernails against the wall. If you think you're alone tonight, maybe check twice. You might not be. Welcome to Halfway Dark, where night shift workers share their darkest encounters. Before we dive in, only 2% of you watching are subscribed, but subscribers get first access to the scariest stories. Join our community of brave souls and hit that subscribe button. The elevator whisper. The horror box rattled on the counter as I returned from another long night shift, the building silent except for the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead. My apartment felt heavier than usual, each shadow lingering longer than it should. I thought I was alone. I pressed the elevator button. The panel flickered, then glowed faintly. That's when I heard it a whisper, soft and deliberate, curling around the empty hallway. "Don't go in." My stomach clenched. I laughed nervously, blaming exhaustion, but the whisper returned, clearer this time, more insistent. My pulse quickened. The elevator doors slid open with a hollow groan. Darkness stretched inside, deeper than it should have been. My reflection shimmered oddly in the metal walls, and for a heartbeat, my eyes seemed hollow, echoing back something that wasn't mine. I stepped in cautiously. The doors closed. The elevator jolted violently, skipping floors, each creak of the cables making my teeth clench. Then I felt it a presence, long and cold, sliding along the walls. A whisper curled around my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I pressed the buttons frantically. Nothing. The lights flickered. Shadows pooled in the corners, stretching unnaturally, bending around shapes that defied reason. My phone buzzed, though the signal was gone. A single text flashed. "Run." I froze, staring at the floor indicator. The elevator skipped below the basement, somewhere the map didn't account for. That's when I saw the shadow, its limbs bending in impossible ways, curling toward me, yet never touching the walls. My breath came shallow. A faint metallic scent filled the car, sharp and sweet, like rusted iron. The reflection in the mirror flickered, and suddenly, I wasn't alone. Another figure pressed against the glass, featureless, pale, its lips moving in silence. Each time I blinked, it was closer. My hand shook on the emergency button. The whisper came again. "We see you." My stomach lurched. A low scraping echoed along the walls, rising and falling like deliberate footsteps, following me, anticipating my movements. The shadows pulsed, spreading along the ceiling in rhythmic undulations, almost like it was breathing. I backed against the far wall, heart hammering, flashlight trembling. The elevator lurched, floor numbers skipping backward and forward in an erratic pulse. I realized I couldn't leave the car. It had become a trap, a box inside a box, every surface alive with a slow, creeping darkness. Suddenly, the lights snapped out entirely. Complete darkness. My flashlight sputtered, weak and flickering, barely illuminating the edges of the car. The whisper circled me, seeming to come from inside my skull. "You can't leave." I forced myself to breathe, counting silently. 1, 2, 3. A faint red glow appeared at the base of the doors, forming symbols I didn't recognize, flickering in and out of existence. The shadow shifted, and for a brief moment, I glimpsed burlap fabric twisted around a head, a crooked grin sewn unnaturally wide, multiple cracks revealing porcelain beneath. The elevator slowed, then stopped. The doors creaked open a fraction, revealing an endless basement corridor, darker than the night itself. I stumbled out, light spilling weakly from a single flickering bulb. My apartment key slipped from my hand as I scanned the hallway. Nothing moved. Too quiet. I spotted the box, the horror box, sitting in the middle of the hall. Its lid was cracked open, glowing faintly. A few envelopes poked out. I approached cautiously. Each one contained photographs. Every angle of the elevator, every floor, and one particularly unnerving image of me, standing frozen, facing the shadow. I swallowed hard. How could it have captured this? How long had it been watching? The whispers returned, softer now, taunting. "You see me now." A cold wind swept through the corridor, carrying the faint metallic scent that had filled the elevator. I shivered, realizing the building was alive somehow, breathing, watching. I grabbed the box and bolted up the stairs, each creak echoing behind me like footsteps of a dozen unseen watchers. My apartment door loomed ahead, faint light spilling from beneath. I shoved the key into the lock, twisting it with shaking hands. The door swung open. Inside, everything appeared normal. too normal. The box rested on the counter as if it had never moved. The envelopes were gone. My pulse slowly returned to normal, but the apartment felt heavier, the shadows lingering longer than they should. For a moment, I allowed myself relief. I made tea, turned on the television, and tried to laugh it off. But when I glanced toward the corner where the box rested, I swore I saw a burlap sack twitch, like a head turning slowly to observe me. My stomach nodded. Over the next few nights, the whispers returned, sometimes soft, sometimes sharp, always close. The elevator never functioned normally again. Lights flickered in ways that made my skin crawl. Sometimes, on my way home, I would feel a presence behind me, just out of sight, moving in rhythm with my heartbeat. I began leaving photographs of the elevator on the box, trying to mock it, prove I wasn't afraid. But each morning, the images had changed. I was always closer to the shadow. Sometimes it appeared in places it shouldn't be, behind a curtain, in a mirror, just barely peeking from the corner of my eye. I started sleeping with the lights on, but the shadows followed me. The whispering escalated, faint at first, then urgent, like an echo in my skull. "You can't leave. You can't leave." The repetition was maddening, relentless. My friends noticed I was jumpy, withdrawn. I never told them why. They wouldn't understand. One night, I awoke to the faint creak of the horror box opening on its own. The lid lifted slowly, and inside, a single envelope floated, hovering mid-air. My hands shook as I reached for it. Inside was a photograph of me in my bed, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling, but behind me, just visible, a tall, spindly shadow with a burlap head and impossibly long limbs stretching toward me. I bolted upright, breath ragged. The room was empty. Only the box remained. I realized then that the shadow wasn't confined to the elevator or the basement. It followed me, learning me, understanding me. It waited for the moment I let my guard down. Now, whenever I ride an elevator, even during the day, I feel it. That presence, silent but watching. Sometimes a whisper slips into my ear, just a fragment. "We see you?" I try to ignore it, convince myself it's my mind. But every time I pass a mirror, I swear the burlap head is there, peeking, grinning, waiting. And I've learned something important. There is no safety. The shadow isn't bound to walls or doors. It exists wherever I allow myself to relax, growing stronger in the dark corners of my mind. The horror box isn't just a box. It's a doorway, and once opened, it never closes. If you ever see a box sitting quietly in a hallway or feel a presence following, remember this: you are not alone. And some doors, once opened, should never be touched. The locked apartment. The box rattled faintly on the counter as I unlocked my apartment door. Tired from the night shift, my bag heavy on my shoulder. The hallway was silent, too silent. The building always creaked and groaned, but tonight it seemed different, heavier. I thought I was alone. I stepped inside and noticed the faint smell of mildew, stronger than usual. The lights flickered once, twice, and then held. I shrugged it off, carrying my bag to the bedroom, but a sense of unease prickled the back of my neck. Something wasn't right. The apartment door slammed behind me. Hard, I jumped, my heart hammering. It was just the wind or so, I tried to convince myself. But then I heard it, a soft knock coming from inside the apartment. Not the door, not the walls, but somewhere behind me. I froze. My eyes scanned the room. Everything was where I had left it. The horror box sat on the kitchen counter, lid slightly ajar. I hadn't touched it in days. A chill crept up my spine. The knock came again, slow and deliberate. Tap, tap. I approached cautiously. The knocking stopped. Silence. I told myself I was imagining it, but then the box rattled. The lid lifted a fraction, as if breathing, and inside, a single envelope rested. I hesitated, knowing I shouldn't open it, but the pull was irresistible. Inside the envelope was a photograph of my apartment. My living room, perfectly framed, the cup I had left on the counter still there. I flipped it over. Another photograph. This one showed me asleep in bed. The angle was impossible taken from inside the closet. A whisper followed, soft and chilling. "You shouldn't be here?" My blood ran cold. I spun around. The closet door was closed, but the air around it seemed thicker, heavier, like something weighted inside. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I tried to call the police. No signal. My phone displayed emergency only. The whisper came again, closer this time. "I see you." The temperature dropped sharply. Frost formed along the edges of the windows, even though the heater had been running all night. I inched toward the closet. My reflection in the mirror across the room shimmered strangely. For a moment, I saw someone else standing there, a figure tall, with long, crooked limbs and a burlap-covered head. When I blinked, it was gone, leaving only the faint smell of dust and paper. The envelope on the counter floated slightly, tilting, as if pushed by invisible fingers. Inside, new photographs. This time, I was moving through the apartment, caught in poses I hadn't yet struck. My stomach twisted. How could it know? The whisper grew louder, more insistent, echoing around the room. "You can't leave. You can't leave." I backed away, tripping over the rug. The box rattled violently. Something inside it stirred, moving with purpose. My hands shook as I reached for the lid. A shadow stretched from the box across the room, thin, curling, moving like smoke with a life of its own. It slithered over the furniture, over the floor, reaching toward me. My breathing became ragged. I stumbled toward the door, desperate to escape, but the doorknob twisted in my hand as if resisting. I realized then the apartment itself was alive. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every small noise was controlled, orchestrated. It watched, learned, and adapted. The whispering filled my mind, overlapping and repeating. "You are mine. You are mine." I grabbed a chair and shoved it against the closet door. The shadow recoiled for a heartbeat, then reformed, creeping along the walls toward me again. The envelope floated from the counter into my hands. The last photograph showed me, crouched in the corner, staring at the box, and behind me, just barely visible, the burlap-headed figure reaching out. Panic surged. I ran for the windows, but they were sealed shut. The lights flickered violently. The box opened wider on its own. The envelope inside, now glowing faintly red. The whispering crescendoed into an incomprehensible murmur, a chorus of voices layered over each other. I collapsed to the floor, clutching the envelope. The shadow loomed above me, limbs bending impossibly. Eyes or where eyes should be hollow and endless. The box rattled, then slammed shut, sending a shockwave that made the floor tremble beneath me. Silence fell. The temperature normalized. My pulse slowed. The box sat quietly again, as if nothing had happened. I dared to breathe. I scanned the apartment. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. But I knew better. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of light, every whispering draft reminded me it was still here. Waiting, learning, watching, and the photographs. They would keep coming, each one closer, each one teaching it more about me. I haven't touched the closet since that night, but I can't avoid it. The horror box never truly closes. And sometimes, when I leave the room, I swear I hear a faint scraping, soft footsteps trailing me, like a memory that refuses to fade. I tried ignoring it. I tried convincing myself it was imagination, but every night the envelope appears. Every photograph shows me differently, sometimes smiling, sometimes terrified, Sometimes staring into the shadow I can never see fully. Even now, as I speak, I feel the presence, lurking, patient, waiting. And I know, no matter how careful I am, the horror box always finds a way to remind me I am never truly alone. So if you ever see a box sitting quietly in a corner, trembling slightly, don't touch it. Don't open it. And for your own safety, never look too closely at what's inside. Because once it watches you, it never stops.